Welcome everybody to another edition of Webinar Wednesday. Hard to believe that we're all the way into October now. Things are going fantastic. So I just wanted to let everybody know how much we appreciate you being with us here today. In just a few moments, as Melissa suggested, we will be introducing our guest today, Mike Begley, who's one of our great friends in technical education. As Melissa said, not afraid to disrupt existing models if it means benefiting his students and his community. So we really look forward to hearing from Mike in just a minute. As a way of teeing up that topic, I want to review what we've been talking about the last few weeks. We've been starting these discussions with a view of how lean manufacturing and education coexist and how we can use the tools in lean to disrupt, as we'll hear about in just a little bit, the world of technical education. We've been talking about the 7 deadly wastes. Well, the truth is, as we identify 7 deadly wastes in manufacturing, there are various what we call lean tools that we can use to eliminate those wastes in our processes. One of those tools that some of you may have heard about is called 5S. And 5S works like this. If we're going to lean out a process or lean out a manufacturing plant, we start by sorting out everything that we don't need and getting it out of the way. And then we set what is left to order. How are we going to make sure that that is well organized? And then we shine it and we build the idea of cleaning our work area consistently throughout the day, build that right into the culture of our organization. Then we standardize it. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And finally, we find a way to sustain the change. It's not the flavor of the day. It's not doing it because it was right today. It's doing it and then making sure that those investments we made in change are sustained well into the future. So that's 5S. That is a lean tool that we use to drive out the 7 deadly wastes in our manufacturing processes. And I want to talk today about this particular one, standardize. Let me give you an example in manufacturing of what we mean by standardizing a process. Before acquiring Lab Midwest about 5 years ago and then Applied Technology Systems a few years after that, I was in the manufacturing world, and we owned a manufacturing company that had plants in Chilton, Wisconsin, and Eldridge, Iowa, and in Shelbyville, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. Well, I started working with that company as CEO in the year 2008. And that year, right after I started, I visited all of our manufacturing plants. I took a trip to our plant in Eldridge, Iowa, and I met with our plant manager there. And as he was touring me through his plant and showing me the various processes that he was running, he made sure to explain to me that they run the Wisconsin plant the Wisconsin way. And he said, we run the Iowa plant the Iowa way. Well, I thought about it for a minute and I responded to him, well, that's okay for now, but really, really soon, we are going to run all of our plants the best way. And I'm guessing that the best way is probably a combination of the Wisconsin way and the Indiana way and the Iowa way. And we are going to put those best practices to work and create the best way. I don't know whether he liked that or not, but the truth of the matter is we did it. And not long thereafter, if I had a plant manager in our Iowa plant that was on vacation, I could take one from our Wisconsin plant and send that individual down there and have them run the plant because it was run exactly the same way. If companies like Cummins or GM buried our Shelbyville plant with work, I could take people from the other 2 plants, like I could take somebody from Iowa and send them to Shelbyville to help that team get their work caught up. That is what standardization looks like, and that is a mainstay in the world of manufacturing. We don't want 10 different ways of doing the same thing. We want one best practice that we can standardize across the operation. Well, those same benefits can accrue to education. If we do things the same way, if we create standardization in terms of the way we deliver learning, we can generate tremendous efficiency in the same way that we do in the world of manufacturing. But the truth is, standardization is kind of a dirty word in the world of education sometimes, is it not? We hear people talk about needing to be responsive to their local employers, that things are different in Western Wisconsin than they are in Eastern Michigan. Well, certainly they are, and we always have to be responsive as educators to our local economy, to our local communities, because they are all different. But at the same time, we can standardize on those approaches to education that benefit everybody. And finding ways to do that makes the process of educating our learners of every age much, much more efficient. So standardization is in some ways a disruptive term in the world of education. And as you know, this discussion today is all about disruption. Today, it's my pleasure to to welcome our guest. He's a great friend. He's a huge advocate for career technical education here in the state of Wisconsin and really all over the country. Mike Begley is the superintendent of schools for the Whitehall School District, where he has been a district administrator for 18 years. Believe it or not, Mike has been in the world of education. He's been a district administrator in the state of Wisconsin and a superintendent for 24 years. He's now in his 24th year as a school superintendent. He has served on a whole bunch of different boards, including the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators. He serves now on the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association Board of Control, and he has served on a whole number of different boards over the course of his career. Right now, he is playing a significant role in the resurgence of the Trempealeau Valley Cooperative, which is a cooperative between the school districts of Whitehall and Arcadia and Blair Taylor and Independence. The primary focus is to create great learning experiences and great career pathways for the 3,000 plus students who are part of this co-op. And Mike is working with the other members of this co-op to find ways to continue to benefit the quality of life for the entire community of Trempealeau County. So Mike, it's such a pleasure to have you joining us today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Matt. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive right in with some really, really interesting questions. First of all, and as we talk to educators at every level across the state of Wisconsin, across the entire Midwest, we're hearing that it's a really, really interesting time. Just bring our audience up to date on how your district is carrying out learning in this crazy year of 2020, 2021.
It certainly is a crazy year, Matt. We have a full choice model, honestly, which is our default status is full remote, which means we are a remote school, except we have 90% of our kids in attendance. So we've given parents the opportunity, the ability to make a choice to send their kids to school. And in that remote version, we have a synchronous and an asynchronous version. So basically, we have a system in place that allows kids to stay home if they choose to, or if that's in their best interest. And they are direct pipelined live audio, video right into our classrooms. Along with that, we can record. So there's an asynchronous version of that. And again, 90%, actually a little bit more than that today, 90+% of our kids are actually here in person, face to face.
Wow, that's incredible that you were able to pivot that quick and create that many options for your students. It also is interesting to realize that 90% of those students are choosing to attend school in the way that they traditionally have, or at least as close to what we could have in this day and age. So I also understand that you're able to do this across a number of different districts. And I know our viewers today are going to be interested in how you created and how you use this co-op model to deliver learning. And I'm sure there were some challenges you encountered along the way of bringing 4 different districts together to try to do things in a standardized fashion.
Well, Matt, you said it nicely. 4 highly competitive districts, a lot of competition prior to the last 4 years. But we've pulled together 4 highly independent school districts with their own identities, under a co-op model that actually is a reboot. If you notice, as you know, our name is the Trempealeau Valley Cooperative 2.0. Back in 1968, this co-op version 1 started. So we've been able to do that and very quickly simply restart it. A lot of our folks still knew what it was. So we restarted it. But anytime you bring groups together, as you already said, you own things and you do things a certain way. So we certainly had some challenges, but communication is huge, being able to not have your feelings hurt as well. And in kind of that disruptive piece, we have a great group of leaders. We have a great group of faculty and staff members around this area that have done so very remarkably in a very short amount of time. Even that system you mentioned, we built those starting in July.
Wow. So we're moving really, really quickly. And in a co-op that has its roots going back a number of years, technology has sure changed quite a bit over that course of that period of time since that original co-op. What can you tell us about the new technology that you're using to implement this model to deliver learning in so many different ways?
Well, all 4 districts are one-to-one. So basically what we have done is with Chromebooks for our students, we've created carts in each classroom with PTZ cameras. So pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. So we can set presets throughout the room. We have monitors, I believe they're 43-inch monitors or displays in each classroom, so the teacher can see the kids who are joining remotely. So it truly is about as interactive as we could be very quickly. And that also allows students to take classes district to district without ever having to leave. So that's part of that future-based piece of this as well.
And we've been to your district a number of times. I've been there, boy, I don't even know, in the last year, probably a dozen or so times. Great people. I can tell you, though, if you want to drive to Whitehall, if you want to drive to Arcadia or Blair Taylor or Independence, you're committing to going somewhere. You're not going there just because you're on your way somewhere else. I remember Jim Dada from Ashley Furniture used to tell me that you don't know rural until you've been to our version of rural. And he's right. I mean, you get off the interstate and you drive a long way and drop cell signals a whole number of times before you show up in Whitehall, Wisconsin. So I'm sure doing this in a rural setting has its own set of challenges, and making it work with limited broadband access and maybe other constraints on technology. Talk to us a little bit about some of those challenges and how they were overcome.
And you're right, Matt. We are rural, and very much so, and multiple providers. In most of the communities themselves, we have a great partner with Tri-County Communications, and they provide high-quality broadband, but we also have areas that not only don't have broadband access, they don't have great cell service. So each of the districts, I can tell you specific to us, we have 50-plus hotspots that we send out with kids who either on an emergency basis, a quarantine basis, or just purely on a remote basis where they don't have broadband. So we've made an investment in those as well and provide that service just because this is the future of how we're going to educate kids. But certainly it has its, I see the picture you're showing with the deep valleys, and certainly that's very significant in terms of our area.
Yep, and I know that firsthand because, as I said, I've been there many, many times, and it's beautiful country and it's worth the trip. But like we said, you have to want to be there. You know, we talk to folks in districts, both rural and urban and everything in between. And I can tell you, if there's one thing that just about every one of them has in common, it's that we rarely run into anybody in the world of education that couldn't use additional resources to accomplish their dreams and to further their programs. So we know that funding is a big challenge. How are you able to fund this investment in technology to make this work?
Well, the investment, the tricky piece of this is we actually use CARE Act money specific to us. I can't speak to each of the 4 districts. I know at least a couple of us use CARE Act money to provide this. So because it was a COVID-based emergency model, but when we set out to build something, we built it so that it was also future-based. It was also something that we could use structurally and not lose the opportunity. In other words, not get stuck in emergency mode and just pick something to get through the next 12 months. So that's how we funded it. I think we're well over $100,000 in new technology costs, and we were 1-to-1 with a great infrastructure already in place. So just those classroom systems and those types of scenarios, along with the hotspot costs, and we had a tremendous staff here. Bryce Anderson is our tech director. He's just phenomenal. You talk about future and cutting edge. Finds things, builds our systems for us. So much like Ashley does, is as you've learned over time, if you don't have it, they build it.
Yep,
and
yeah,
we're kind of in the same mode.
They certainly do, and we've experienced that firsthand without question. So great job using CARES Act money for technology and for innovation. You know, I think a lot of folks when they had that capital available to them, they looked to how they were going to offset operating expenses that they had already incurred as a result of the crisis that everybody went through last spring. And to your credit and true to form, you found ways to use that funding to continue to push the agenda forward for your entire district, and most importantly, to the benefit of your students and of their families. So as you've moved into this new era of learning and this new method of delivery, tell us of what you're hearing from students and what you're hearing from parents in terms of their experience.
I think the experience, simply anytime you can provide choice, Matt, it's better. You know, it's truly you're choosing to do something. We've heard over and over again, the vast majority of our parents are just happy we're open and allowing kids to come. Those, though, that are joining remotely are doing really well. We've worked through a few of the kinks, as you would expect. When we have to go real time that fast, we didn't have a lot of test mode. So we certainly built the model and put it in place and then adjusted as we went. But the response has been overwhelmingly positive, that even a child who has a dentist appointment in the afternoon, mom or dad doesn't have to race back to get them here. They can jump on a device. They can pop into class, so it's, as we get into the winter season coming, 2 years ago, we had 13 snow days up here. Snow days are no longer an issue. If it's unsafe for kids to go, we go full remote, and there we are. So
So no more waking up in the morning dreaming of the snow day, huh?
in our teachers can still teach from here. They can come to school. It's usually safer, but so I think it's going to make everybody even more comfortable going forward, I think, is a good way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're talking today with Mike Begley. Mike is the superintendent of schools for the Whitehall School District in Western Wisconsin. I can tell you that I've traveled all over with Mike. We've been to Indiana together. We've been to Florida together. We've been to a number of different places. And everywhere he goes, people want to hear about his views on education, on technical education, because he's not afraid to try new things. He's not afraid to blaze a new trail. Certainly, he meets the definition of disruptor. And I know that's part of your DNA, Mike. It's just who you are. But there are benefits and challenges to being a disruptor, especially when it comes to the world of education. Tell us about your experience in terms of disrupting models, what challenges you've run into, and what benefits you've derived as a result.
Well, I think the challenges, Matt, are very simple, and you would identify them as well as just that standard resistance to change. Folks get very fearful right off the bat. Even with this model that we built, we had a fair amount of fear with some of our staff members about being recorded. Teachers are criticized so openly that being willing to put something out on video, much like we're doing today, we're comfortable. We do this. But I think the disruptor piece, it's one of those things. I think if you genuinely care, you don't set out to be a disruptor. It's just what you do, as you said. So I think the challenges of it are just that resistance to change in general and unwillingness to try new things. We deal with human beings. It's not like you can afford to make a mistake. So I think there's a resistance that way. But certainly the benefits of it it's certainly energizing. As you noted in the bio, that's a little bit too long for me. I've been doing this a long time. In being able to stay energetic and being able to stay in the good fight. We fight for the good people, the kids, and trying to provide all that we can provide for them. So I think the disruptor piece, you don't set out to be a disruptor. If you're going to influence things, it's usually because, as you said, it's in your DNA. It's how you're wired. We just care, and I'm very fortunate to have a lot of folks around here, the other three superintendents, the administrative staffs, the educator staffs, they all care about kids and they want to do the right thing. So from that part, it's a little bit easier. And the simple reality is we have to change. We have to change quickly. And I had the luxury of growing up professionally with some tremendous leaders. And one day I woke up and they were all retired. And you kind of wait for that void to get filled, and then you figure out you're it.
That's right.
So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I love that approach. And a couple of the things that you just suggested, if you genuinely care, if you put your students first, then it's really not disruption. It's just doing the right thing. And if you're committed to doing the right thing, then that's what it's all about. I know part of the right thing and part of what you spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about and working on is creating as many pathways for your students as possible. And some of our students that are going through a secondary schooling program, going through K-12, some of those students, they're going to go direct to workforce, and that's awesome. And some of them may go on to a four-year university, and some of them, some others might be cut out for technical college. And I know it's really important to you not just to create and make them aware of as many pathways as possible and make sure they understand that not any single pathway is right for every student or vice versa. It's all about finding that right match. But I think the other thing is making sure that we create efficient pathways and making sure that students are getting credit for the work that they're already doing. And I know this is a topic that you are really, really passionate about. So tell us a little bit about some of your ongoing work with post-secondary aligning programs, creating transcripted credit opportunities, and giving your students as much credit for their work and their learning that they're doing while they're in the K-12 district as they move on to whatever comes next.
Well, Matt, you're right. We've done a tremendous amount of work with some great partners with Western Technical College, Chippewa Valley Technical College, UW Stout, and many others. Gateway Technical College, we've been involved with them. I think the challenge, the basic way we've said it is we need to not have credits to nowhere. We need to make sure everything is stackable, everything is malleable, everything goes to what folks need, what kids need. All high schools around the state have kids leaving with college credits. whether they are technical college credits or university credits. The vast majority of them we found with extensive research sponsored by Ashley, we found so many of those don't move into degree programs. They're simply credits. You come in with elective credits but nothing structural. So that's our new challenge, is how do we get better at defining those specific pathways that are future based? So much of our discussions always revert back to what we've always done. We need to do better than that. We need to figure out what's coming next. So, as we go forward, we're looking at an option. Western Technical College has a satellite campus in Independence. So our next step is, how do we truly create a K-20 plus approach for our area and bring Stout down here, bring Western up here, Chippewa Valley if we're able to, and certainly they're great people. We've had great interest from them as well, to best serve all of our kids and their parents, quite frankly. We have an underserved adult population here as well, and we have some tremendous global employers and things like that. So we're really working on now that K-20 plus approach of being able to continually provide the training necessary for folks to have high quality experiences in lives. And it's the fundamental of our co-op. It's the fundamental nature of the work we're doing.
So in the midst of this COVID era, where we're certainly trying to find a pandemic-proof way of delivering learning, and it certainly seems as though you found a way to do that, you're also thinking about the future, as evidenced by your answer to the last question, Mike. Now, one of the things that I know is important to you is you think about technology and you think about using it to deliver learning in new ways, especially in this era where we can't all be in a classroom. It's not just about getting through what we hope is a 6 or 12 or 18-month pandemic. It's about what happens after that's over. And are we planning not just for the next 18 months, but for the next 18 years? What can you tell us about the long-term vision for your program, and then how this current investment in technology plays into that long-term vision?
Well, maybe the most identifiable piece is our 4 high schools now are coordinating to run one master schedule for next fall. So we will take all of our staff resources, all of our student needs and requests, all of our programs, and try to schedule them as one big high school in 4 locations, and try to do something like that. So that's the long-term model, and certainly the technology provides that. If my freshman son, or sophomore son, wants to take Algebra 2 and doesn't fit in his schedule here, he can take it from Arcadia. He doesn't have to leave the building. So I think when we set out to build this model, and you're right, we manage COVID, but at the same time, we're trying to lead towards a future as well and blend the two together as best we can. So, but that flexibility of literally being able to offer classes from anywhere and take them from anywhere, I think is the true long-term future model of where we're heading. Folks don't sit anymore. Districts don't own any kids. It used to be your kids were stuck because that's where they were, and that has stopped. It's so much growth and so much change over time. And now we're living in a world where kids can go anywhere. So we have an obligation to best serve them, and I think this model does that.
And all of this innovation coming from Whitehall School District in rural western Wisconsin, which is really, really impressive, along with your partners. We don't want to leave them behind, of course, Arcadia and Blair Taylor and Independence. Just incredible, incredible innovation. And with that, Melissa, I'm quite sure that we've had some interesting questions roll in from our audience over the course of the last 25 minutes or so. What would they like to hear us talk about?
Thanks, Matt. And just a reminder to our audience, as we move into this time of Q&A, you can use that Q&A button on your Zoom control panel to submit questions for Matt or Mike, and we'll have them answer those. Mike, the first question that came through, how were you able to standardize materials for your in-person versus remote courses?
It's funny you bring that up, because as we're doing this, I'm watching folks come in and out. We do weekly pickup and drop off for parents. To try to get kids that are using the remote system the same materials that are being used as consumables in classrooms. But the standardization piece, I'm going to maybe take it in a little bit different direction, is our co-op schools are also, we've identified as the term substantially similar. We're moving to that for curriculum, period, K-12. So if we have substantially similar curriculums, a child can move back and forth if they do, and be seamless. So we're kind of attacking this whole remote system the same way. How do we create a seamless approach? It's probably the biggest challenge, honestly, for our staff, and the biggest use of their time and energy, quite frankly, and we need to be cognizant of that as well. But we're working hard to make sure that the kids that are using the remote system have the same exact materials, using Google Classroom, using the Meets, being able to connect audio and video, all of those things. We're trying to standardize as best we can, but it is a challenge, honestly.
And I think one of the challenges, we work with technical education. And so, Mike, can you tell us about how you're able to teach those more hands-on courses with this model?
As I mentioned, we're able to allow kids to come. Okay, and I think Matt touched on it early. We have the mobile skills lab that is part of our co-op, and that was sponsored by Ashley. That is tied into automation and mechatronics and Internet of Things. That system itself is set up for that with simulation software. We're trying to make the next migration forward of how do we engage kids in hands-on classes if they're using remote. That is going to be a challenge no matter what we do. We're going to have to provide, going forward now past COVID or post-COVID, we're going to have to provide lab opportunities. Maybe they're after hours, different hours, flexible nature, and provide kids to be able to have hands-on things as well. Right now, this is an easy model to apply to core curriculum. The hands-on piece of which we feel so very strongly about, I think will always require folks to come in. But we do send things out. For instance, a lot of what went out today, it's not specifically tied to CTE, but it was art materials. So our art materials are going home for our kids. So when they join an art class, they're able to use the same things. The instruction is the same. Some of the materials that we have in our CTE are portable, are able to move out. So kind of a blend, Melissa, is what we would use, is kind of that blended approach for hands-on and with a lot of work to do yet.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. I think we have time for one more question. And this question comes as no surprise, as you talked about you're looking to get 4 schools on the same schedule for next fall. How on earth do you plan to accomplish that? And what kind of advice would you offer for another educator, another district looking to replicate that same idea?
Well, I think the basics would be talk a lot and leave your feelings at home, just simply because it's all give and take. We all have to figure out the things that are meaningful and how do we make them work. But I can tell you, we do have a common calendar for this year already with all 4 of us, a common bell schedule for the high school in all 4 districts. That does allow things to happen a whole lot easier. This is the first year of the 3 that we've had both of those things in place. And then next year, we're moving into that common schedule. We couldn't do the common master schedule without the bell system and the calendar. Now, COVID has thrown a little wrench into that as we have to adjust on the fly continually with days here. But we're looking forward to the future when we can just leave things stable and really maximize the potential of this co-op and then all of the technology that comes with it.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely have to do a follow-up webinar next year when that gets implemented and see how it goes. Thanks, Mike. I think, Matt, that's going to be it for our audience questions. I'll leave things to you to wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you, Melissa and Mike. I knew this was going to be a great discussion. I knew you were going to be an amazing guest, and you did not disappoint. So thank you so much for being with us. My thanks to Mike Begley, the Superintendent of Schools for Whitehall School District. Just a great discussion today about how his co-op and his district are disrupting the education model in a really, really good way. So thank you, Mike, so much for being with us. We have some great topics coming up the next several weeks. Next week, we are having a webinar with the National Center for Supply Chain Automation. I'll be joined by their industry liaison, along with the CEO of the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council, Neil Reddy, and Paul Perkins, the president of Amatrol. We will have a robust discussion about automating the supply chain and how do we prepare the workforce. How do we create certifications and deliver certifications to those individuals? You won't want to miss that one. Following week, on the 21st of October, we're going to be talking all about 3D metal printing, really, really progressive technology that a company called Exact Metal in State College, Pennsylvania is pushing out into the marketplace. That is going to be a fantastic discussion. And then on the 28th of October, I will be joined by Jacob Gitter, who is with the West Bend School District, and Kelly Kwiatowski, who is with the New Berlin School District, both great ATS Lab Midwest partners. We're going to talk about how do we go about winning grant money for CTE programs. As we talked about earlier with Mike, funding is always a challenge in education. So how do we create organizations and how do we create models that can be funded by grants to offset some of that cost? So we'll be talking about that with two great guests on the 28th of October. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us for yet another webinar Wednesday. For all of our people at ATS Lab Midwest, for our producer, Melissa Martin, thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you next week.